Good morning, everyone. I'm Melanie Reif, presiding officer for the Utah Public Service Commission. This morning, we have several dockets before us for hearing concerning pass-through dockets in dockets 1805-7, 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17. Unless otherwise indicated, my intention is to go in order of these dockets. And just to clarify, the 13 docket is the application of Dominion Energy Utah for an adjustment to the daily transportation imbalance charge. Docket 14 is pass-through application of Dominion Energy Utah for an adjustment in rates and charges for natural gas service in Utah. The 15 docket is application of Dominion Energy Utah to amortize the Conservation Enabling Tariff Balancing Act. Docket 16 is application of Dominion Energy Utah to amortize the Energy Efficiency Deferred account balance. And docket 17, the final docket, is application of Dominion Energy Utah for an adjustment to low-income assistance energy assistance rate. As noticed up, this is the date and time for the hearing for all of these matters. And so we will hear them in order as I indicated, unless there is a desire to do something different. So I'll turn now to the company, and I understand there may be something you want to address.
There is, just in terms of process. The company has two witnesses today on the 14 docket, the pass-through docket, and the reason for that is one witness will summarize and answer questions related to the initial application and the reply memorandum. Since that time, the company has filed a supplemental filing containing corrected tariff sheets. That was filed yesterday. We found some additional problems with some of the headings on a couple of the pages. And so Mr. Summers will speak to those corrections, and at the conclusion of all the hearings, I think the company is going to request an order that we file a compliance filing with complete and comprehensive tariff sheets in all of the dockets today, as well as 18057T04, and Mr. Summers will be speaking to that as well. But I wanted to alert you that we've got two witnesses on that docket, and Mr. Summers will be talking about something a little unusual.
Okay. And would you be so kind as to introduce your second witness as well?
I will. So I am Jennifer Clark. I am counsel for the company. Austin Summers is also here as a witness for the company, and Jessica Ibsen is here as a witness for the company.
Okay. Thank you very much. Was there anything else as far as procedurally that you wanted to address before we continue taking appearances? Okay, very good. All right. Mr. Jetter.
Good morning. I'm Justin Jetter with the Utah Attorney General's Office, and I'm representing the Utah Division of Public Utilities in the hearings today. The division intends to call two witnesses, Doug Wheelwright and Brenda Salter. Brenda Salter will testify in the docket ending in 16, and Doug Wheelwright will testify for the division in the remaining dockets.
Okay, very good. And at the outset, I had indicated that we would take these in the order in which they're presented, so in numerical order. Is that acceptable with everyone? Does that work well with what you had planned? Okay, so let's start with the 13 docket, and we'll allow the company to go first.
Thank you. The company calls Austin Summers.
Mr. Summers, I'll go ahead and swear you in, and just for purposes of clarification, when I swear each of the witnesses in, you'll be sworn in for the entire hearing, so that won't be necessary for me to swear you in when we discuss each separate docket. Okay. So do you swear to tell the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Summers, please state your name and business address for the record.
My name is Austin Summers, and my business address is 333 South State Street in Salt Lake City, Utah.
Please identify your employer and what position you hold there.
I work for Dominion Energy Utah, and I'm a manager of regulatory affairs.
Mr. Summers, was the application
of regulatory affairs?
That's fine, thanks. Mr. Summers, was the application in this docket and the accompanying exhibits 1.1 through 1.3 prepared by you or under your direction?
Yes.
The company would move to admit the application and accompanying exhibits.
Any objection? They're admitted.
Mr. Summers, would you please summarize the relief the company seeks in this docket?
Yes, in docket number 18-057-13, Dominion Energy Utah seeks to update the daily transportation imbalance charge using the historical data for the 12 months ended August 31st, 2018. Based on this historical data, the company is proposing to increase the rate slightly from 7.645 cents to 8.122 cents per decatherm. The company believes that this rate is just, reasonable, and in the public interest. Therefore, the company requests that the rates be approved with an effective date of November 1st, 2018, and that concludes my summary.
Mr. Summers is available for cross-examination and commission questions.
Thank you. Any questions from the division?
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Summers, thank you for your testimony. Don't have any further questions for you at this time.
Thank you.
Would you prefer that I make a motion at the conclusion of each of the dockets, or would you prefer that I wait until the end of the hearing to address all of them? I can do it either way. It might be easier at the end for me.
I'm not really sure what sort of a motion you intend.
So the company will, at the appropriate time, move for a bench order in each of these dockets, and then also for an order asking that we make compliance filings in each of the dockets.
Okay. Just for clarification, the commission does intend to issue an order right away, so
perfect.
that will address your concern about the bench order issue.
Okay.
And we will do so after taking in the information received at the hearing. So we're not prejudging the situation or otherwise giving an indication of how we intend to rule, but we will be issuing an order.
Then I would simply reserve the right to make a motion at the conclusion of the hearing on all matters.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Very
The
good.
company has nothing further on this matter.
Okay. All right. Mr. Jetter.
Thank you. The division would like to call and have sworn in Doug Wheelwright.
Mr. Wheelwright, good morning.
Good morning.
I'm going to swear you in this morning, and as I mentioned earlier, your testimony this morning will be based on your swearing in for the entire hearing. So do you swear to tell the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Mr. Wheelwright, would you please state your name and occupation for the record?
My name is Douglas D. Wheelwright. I'm a technical consultant with the Division of Public Utilities.
Thank you. And with respect to the 18-057-13 docket, the adjustment to the daily transportation imbalance charge, have you had the opportunity to review the filings the company's made in this docket?
Yes, I have.
And did you create and cause to be filed with the commission an action request response with recommendations that were filed in each of the 5 dockets we're addressing today on October 23rd, 2018?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any corrections or changes you'd like to make to that?
I do. I have 3 corrections to the memo.
Please go ahead.
On page 13, the paragraph beginning the effect on typical GS customers, the last line, we need to remove on an interim basis from that. So the line would read, the division recommends that the commission approve the application with an effective date of November 1st, 2018. The second correction is on page 15. We have an incorrect docket number in the heading. It should be 18057-17. And on that same page, the last paragraph, third line from the bottom, says slight increase. It should be a slight decrease. So that sentence will read, the proposed credit assumes a slight decrease to 21,432 participants.
Mr. Wheelwright, I apologize for interrupting you. I just want to make sure I'm following you correctly. Could we go back to page 14 and the correction you were making to the 17 docket as opposed to the 16 docket, and just so I'm marking my copy and accurately noting exactly where you're making that correction.
Okay. We have the first correction, is that?
Yes.
Okay, the second correction is on page 15.
Okay.
In the heading, It incorrectly says docket number 16-057-12, and it needs to be 18-057-17.
Okay, thank you. And then, I'm sorry, your final notation before I interrupted you.
On that same page, the last paragraph, the third line from the bottom, where it says slight increase, should be changed to slight decrease.
Thank you.
That's all my changes.
Thank you. With those changes, would you adopt the recommendations contained in that memo today?
Yes.
Have you prepared a brief summary with respect to the 13 docket?
Yes.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. Docket number 18-057-13, or the Transportation Imbalance Charge, was established to charge transportation customers for the supplier non-gas services that are being used on the company's natural gas distribution system. The calculation of this rate is based on the methodology approved in docket 14-057-31 and is to be adjusted with each pass-through filing and in the next general rate case. The proposed change represents an increase from 7.645 cents per decatherm to 8.122 cents per decatherm and is calculated based on the actual volumes of transportation customers for the 12 months ending August 31st, 2018. This rate applies to transportation customers that are taking service under the MTTS and FT1 rate schedules, and any amount collected under this rate is credited to GS customers through the 191 account. This rate does not impact all transportation customers in the same way and applies only if customers' nominations are outside of the plus or minus 5% daily tolerance limit. Transportation customers can minimize or possibly avoid this charge through accurate daily gas nominations. The division believes that the requested changes are in the public interest and recommends that the proposed rate be approved on an interim basis with an effective date of November 1st, 2018. And that concludes my summary.
Thank you. I'd like to move at this time to enter the action request response filed by the division on October 23rd, 2018 into the record. And procedurally, I wasn't sure if we should enter this in each one of these dockets as we go through them or do it now for all of them.
Might be best procedurally if we wait till the end.
Okay.
In that way, we don't have the appearance of entering something that hasn't already been before the commission in the hearing.
Okay.
Would that be acceptable?
Yes, that'd be fine.
Yes.
I'll withdraw that
Okay.
motion now and make it at the end.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Jetter?
No, Mr. Wheelwright's available for
Okay.
cross.
Any questions from the?
No questions from the company.
Okay. Mr. Wheelwright, thank you very much for your testimony today and for the clarifications that you provided in the other dockets. I do want to ask just a follow-up question regarding your testimony in the 13 docket.
Yes.
You, I believe, testified that the rate adjustment would be in the public interest. Do you believe that it's also just and reasonable?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. I don't have any further questions. Mr. Jetter, do you intend to call anyone else in this docket?
Nothing further from the division.
Okay. Is there anything further in the 13 docket?
No, thank you.
Okay. All right. Then let's move on to the 14 docket. This is the pass-through application of Dominion Energy Utah for an adjustment in rates and charges for natural gas service in Utah.
The company calls Jessica Ibsen.
Good morning, Ms. Ibsen.
Good morning.
I am going to swear you in for the entire hearing, even if, so if you do testify in any other dockets, you'll be considered already sworn in. Do you swear to tell the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Would you please state your name and business address for the record?
My name is Jessica Ibsen. My address is 333 South State Street, Salt Lake City, Utah.
Please identify your employer and what position you hold there.
I work for Dominion Energy Utah, and I'm a Regulatory Analyst 3.
Ms. Ibsen, did you prepare or was it prepared under your direction the application and accompanying exhibits 1.1 through 1.11?
Yes.
And the company also submitted reply comments in this docket with accompanying exhibits 1.3U, 1.4U, 1.5U, 1.6U, 1.7U, 1.8U, and 1.11U. Were those documents also prepared by you or under your direction?
Yes.
And would you adopt the contents of those documents as your testimony today?
Yes.
The company moves for the admission of the application with accompanying exhibits 1.1 through 1.11 and the reply comments and accompanying exhibits.
Any objection?
No objection.
They are admitted.
Ms. Ibsen, can you summarize the relief the company is seeking in this docket?
Yes. In pass-through docket number 18-057-14, as it was updated in Dominion Energy Utah's reply comments and updated exhibits on October 25th, 2018, Dominion Energy Utah respectfully asked the Utah Public Service Commission for approval of $485,544,677 in Utah gas cost coverage. This represents an overall decrease of $45,784,000. The components of this decrease are first, a decrease of $37,701,000 in commodity costs, and second, a decrease of $8,083,000 in supplier non-gas costs. This request includes an amortization of the commodity portion of the actual August 2018 over-collected 191 account balance of $32,036,164 by a 28.833 cent per decatherm credit surcharge. The company is also requesting an amortization of the undercollected S&G costs. The S&G balance was slightly undercollected from expected levels at the end of March by $8,079,403, which leads to the debit amortization charges shown on DEU Exhibit 1.6U, page 3. The cost of purchased gas was developed using the forecasted gas prices from both Pyra Energy Group and Cambridge Energy Research Associates. If this application is approved, a typical Utah GS customer using 80 decatherms per year would see a decrease of $32.88, or a total annual decrease of about 5.16%. These rates are just, reasonable, and in the public interest. Therefore, we request the rates proposed in commodity and S&G be allowed to go into effect on an interim basis on November 1st, 2018.
Does that conclude your summary?
Yes.
Ms. Ibsen is available for cross-examination and commission questions.
Thank you. Any questions from the division?
No questions. Thank you.
Ms. Clark, you intend to call another witness on the filing from yesterday, correct?
We do,
Okay.
yes.
All right, then I will, I don't have any further questions, so thank you very much for your testimony today.
Thank you. The company would then call Mr. Austin Summers.
Thank you. Mr. Summers?
Mr. Summers, you've been sworn and you've identified yourself earlier in this hearing. I want to ask a couple of questions in this docket. In this docket, the company filed submission of supplemental information with accompanying exhibits. Were those documents prepared by you or under your direction?
Yes.
And can you please describe for the commission the purpose of that pleading?
Yes, just to finish off the summary in this docket and also to prepare for the rest of the dockets that are being heard today, I just want to explain one item that's relevant to all of the dockets in this hearing, as well as docket number 18-057-T04, which was the TS Tariff docket, the transportation docket. That docket was heard previously and has already been ordered on by the commission. The tariff sheets in the T04 docket were approved with an effective date of November 1st, 2018. If approved by the commission, the rates being discussed today will also be effective on November 1st of 2018. Due to the varied timing of filings and the orders being issued, the company didn't file tariff sheets in any of the dockets that include the combined effect of all the tariff changes with a November 1st effective date. To remedy this, yesterday the company filed comprehensive tariff sheets that incorporate all of the changes discussed today and the changes in the T04 docket. Upon approval of the rates in today's hearing, the company will file these sheets in each of today's dockets. So that would include the transportation imbalance charge in the 13 docket, the pass-through in the 14 docket, the CET in the 15 docket, the DSM energy efficiency in the 16 docket, and the low income in the 17 docket, as well as in the T04 docket. We would file those there as well. This course of action will provide a complete record in each of these dockets and will allow the rates to be approved today with an effective date of November 1st of 2018.
Mr. Summers, if the commission permits the company, if the commission approves the dockets today and permits the company to make the compliance filing that you've described, would there be any additional changes or corrections to those tariff sheets?
Yes, there would. After the sheets were filed yesterday, commission staff found some non-substantive errors in the headings of some of the tariff sheets. Just to be clear, these do not affect any of the rates that are being proposed today. It's just something to tie the T04 docket into all of the dockets that are being heard today, and just making sure that everything's clean for the going forward.
Thank you, Mr. Summers. The company would move for the admission of the submission of supplemental information and accompanying exhibits that were filed in this docket.
Any objection?
No objection.
Thank you. They are admitted.
Mr. Summers is available for cross-examination and also commission questions.
Any questions from the division?
No questions, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Summers, thank you for your testimony today, and for the clarification that you provided and will be providing. This is just an invitation in case the company wants to do it, in the event that it might be helpful to the commission and possibly the division, since we just received the documents yesterday, and presumably the division did as well. Would you like to identify what you are referring to as non-substantive changes that you intend to make?
Sure.
If I may approach.
Yes, please.
Thank you. For the record, the company has provided the commission and parties and the court reporter with what we have marked as hearing exhibit 1. And Mr. Summers can use this illustratively to speak to the changes you questioned him about. So please proceed.
Okay, so the non-substantive changes that would change between what was filed yesterday on October 30th and what we would file later today, if you will turn to page 5-9, which is the Municipal Transportation Service MT rate schedule. In the heading of the tariff sheets that were filed yesterday, it says 5.03 Municipal Transport Service MT rate schedule. That should be changed, the word transport should be changed to transportation, which just makes it consistent with everything that was filed in the T04 docket. And that is the only change on that page. The other change is on page 5-11. And there are a few changes on this one that I'll walk you through. The first is, again, in the heading, where it says 5.04, and it says TS rate schedule. We will be changing that to 5.04 transportation service rate schedule, and then in parentheses, TSF and TSI. The reason for that change is in the T04 docket, they did away with the TS class. So there is now just a TSF and a TSI class. There are other changes on this page that are similar to that, right below the heading where it says TS volumetric rates. That will say TSF and TSI volumetric rates. Then again, a similar change a few lines down. It's toward the middle of the page where there's a bold heading that says TS fixed charges. That will say TSF and TSI fixed charges. A few lines down from that on the firm demand charge. That firm demand charge per decatherm will say firm demand charge per decatherm TSF volumes. Also, something that we noticed is that says C section 5.02, and we will be changing that to C section 5.01. And then the last change, let me make sure of that. Yeah, the last change is on that last bold heading that says TS classification provisions. That will also be changed to TSF and TSI classification provisions. And that is all of the changes that would be made in the compliance filing.
And the company would move for the admission of hearing Exhibit 1.
No objection.
Any objection? Mr. Summers, before I rule on that, let me just ask you a follow-up question, just for clarification, because I haven't had a chance to go through all of the numbers and compare whether there's any difference other than the numbers that appeared in the filing yesterday are in blue and today they're in red. Is there any difference between what was filed yesterday and today in as much as the rates that are presented on these pages is concerned?
There is no difference in the rates that
Okay.
are on the pages.
Okay, thank you very much. Your request to have this admitted is approved.
Thank you.
Anything further?
The company has nothing further on this docket.
Okay. Mr. Jetter, do you need some time?
May I just have 1 minute?
We can take a break if you wish. Would you like a break, 5 minutes or 10 minutes?
Maybe just 1 minute.
Okay.
Would probably be about
Okay.
how much time we need.
Do we need to go back to the company, perhaps?
Yes, I think the company may recall Mr. Summers just
Okay.
very briefly.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Summers, do you have a clarification you'd like to make with respect to hearing Exhibit Number 1?
Yes, just for clarification, I might have misspoken. On page 5-11, that's the transportation service rate schedule. The firm demand charge per decatherm, down there toward the middle of the page, I might have said firm demand charge per decatherm TS volumes. That should be TSF volumes. That is only for the firm customers on that rate schedule.
Thank you, Mr. Summers. I do see that written on the document. And while you have been recalled, and just to make sure that we have an overabundance of statements in the record, Is it your testimony today, sir, that with respect to this docket, that the rates that are being proposed are just and reasonable and in the public interest?
Yes, they are.
Thank you very much. I have no further questions.
The company also has nothing further.
Okay. Mr. Jetter, are you ready to proceed?
I am, thank you.
Okay.
The division would like to recall Doug Wheelwright, and he's been sworn in, so if I may, I'll just jump in here. Mr. Wheelwright, have you had the opportunity to review the application filed in the 18-05714 docket, along with all the exhibits to that and the filings that have been made, including a couple of correction filings that were made relatively recently?
Yes, I have.
And would you adopt the action request response dated October 23rd, 2018 that we've discussed earlier in today's hearing with the corrections that you've made in the discussion in the prior docket?
Yes, I would.
Were you present in the hearing room when Mr. Summers testified regarding some corrections that were made to a number of the headings in the proposed tariff language?
Yes, I was.
Do any of those change your opinion?
No.
Thank you. And have you prepared a brief summary of the division's position in this docket?
Yes, I have.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. Docket number 18057-14, known as the 191 pass-through application, asks for commission approval for a decrease of $37.7 million in the commodity component and a decrease of $8.1 million in the supplier non-gas component of the natural gas rates for a combined decrease of $45.8 million. The primary reason for the decrease is due to a reduction in the forecast price of the cost of service gas provided by Wexpro and an over-collected balance in the 191 account. For the test year ending October 31st, 2019, it is anticipated that approximately 56% of the total gas requirement will be satisfied from the Wexpro cost of service gas production, and the remaining 44% purchased through existing and future contracts, along with spot market purchase transactions. If this docket is approved individually, a typical GS customer will see a decrease in their annual bill of $32.88, or a decrease of 5.16%. The division recommends that the proposed rate be approved on an interim basis until a full audit of the 191 account can be completed. The division believes that the requested changes are just, reasonable, and in the public interest, and recommends that the proposed rate changes be approved on an interim basis with an effective date of November 1st, 2018. And that concludes my summary.
Thank you. I have no further questions. Mr. Wheelwright's available for cross-examination or questions from the commission.
Any questions?
The company has no questions.
Okay. Mr. Wheelwright, I think I have just one question for you.
Okay.
With respect to the hearing exhibit that was presented this morning, I believe you've testified on this already, but I just want to be absolutely sure that you've had adequate time to review the information and that you agree with the information that has been presented in this document.
Yes.
Okay. Yes to both questions?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Mr. Jetter, do you have anything further in this docket?
No, nothing further from the division.
Okay, thank you. So unless there's anything further from the company here.
There is not. Thank
Okay,
you.
we'll move on to the next docket, the 15 docket, which is entitled Application of Dominion Energy Utah to Amortize the Conservation Enabling Tariff Balancing Account.
Thank you. The company calls Mr. Summers once again. Mr. Summers, you've been sworn and you've identified yourself. With regard to the application that was filed in this docket and the accompanying exhibits 1.1 through 1.5, were those documents prepared by you or under your direction?
Yes,
And do you adopt their contents as your testimony today?
I do.
The company would move to admit the application and accompanying exhibits 1.1 through 1.5.
Any objection?
No objection.
They're admitted.
Mr. Summers, would you please summarize the relief the company seeks in this docket?
Yes, in this docket, the company is requesting to amortize the Conservation Enabling Tariff Balancing Account. The company proposes to decrease the amortization rate to eliminate an overcollected balance of $9,153,146. This credit amortization will result in an annual decrease of $7.43 for a typical customer, or about a 1.17% decrease. The proposed rates are just, reasonable, and in the public interest. Therefore, the company requests that the rates be approved, with rates going into effect on November 1st, 2018.
Does that conclude your summary?
Yes.
Mr. Summers is available for cross-examination and commission questions.
Any questions from the division?
No questions. Thank you.
I have no questions. Ms. Clark?
Thank you. The company has nothing further on this docket.
Okay. Mr. Jetter?
Thank you. The division will again recall Doug Wheelwright in the 1805715 docket. Mr. Wheelwright, with respect to the 1805715 docket, the action request response that we've discussed in the earlier dockets today, dated October 23rd, 2018, with the corrections that were made by you earlier today, do the recommendations contained therein remain the recommendations from the division today?
Yes.
And would you adopt that action request response as part of your testimony in this docket?
Yes, I would.
Have you prepared a brief summary of the division's position in this docket?
Yes.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. Docket number 18057-15, known as the Conservation Enabling Tariff, or CET, as for Commission approval to amortize the August 2018 overcollected balance of $9.2 million. The division has reviewed and supports the application and the calculations as submitted by the company. If this docket were approved individually, a typical GS customer would see a decrease in their annual bill of $7.43, or 1.17%. The division believes that the requested changes are just, reasonable, and in the public interest, and recommends that the Commission approve the rates with an effective date of November 1st, 2018. And that concludes my summary.
Thank you. I have no further questions, and Mr. Wheelwright is available for cross or questions from the Commission.
Thank you. Any questions from the company?
No, the company has no questions.
Mr. Wheelwright, I have a number of questions I want to talk to you about in this docket.
Okay.
So please bear with me. I do have your change noted on page 13 that you mentioned at the outset of your testimony, indicating that the division is no longer requesting interim rates in this docket.
Yes.
And just as a starting point, is it your testimony that the rates that are being proposed in this docket are just, reasonable, and in the public interest?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm going to go back in time a little bit to this docket last year. The CET rates in the 1705-715 docket were approved on an interim basis, recommended by the DPU. In this docket, however, you are no longer requesting that they be approved on an interim basis.
Correct.
Can you help me Can you help the Commission understand what your reasoning is for that?
Yes, the CET does not require an audit. Really, the only thing we need to verify is the number of customers that the company has on its books, and the approved rate. We verified that, so we don't believe it needs to be approved on an interim basis. The prior CETs, it was our impression that we had closed those, and I didn't realize that we had asked for interim rates in the last filing.
Okay, so if you're approving moving forward with final rates in this docket, in the current docket that's pending, the current CET docket, Is there an audit that's still ongoing in the prior year CET docket?
No. No, we do not need to do an audit of the CET.
Okay.
We could recommend that
Those
prior
be made-
docket be closed,
Okay.
if that would make a cleaner record.
I think that would be very helpful.
Okay.
So I assume you will be doing that
Yes.
shortly after this hearing
We can do
to
that
clear up
today.
any
Yes.
confusion. So just to follow up, and this is probably goes without saying, that if the rates in this docket are approved as final, the DPU will not be doing an audit in this docket.
That's correct.
Okay. Very good. Mr. Wheelwright, that information is very helpful. I appreciate it. And I don't have any further questions for you. I do, however, want to recall Mr. Summers because I think I forgot to ask him a question, or I may have neglected to mark something down when he said it. So if I may recall Mr. Summers. Mr. Summers, with respect to the 15 docket, the CET docket, is it your testimony that the rates that are being proposed are just and reasonable and in the public interest?
Yes, they are.
Thank you very much, sir. Okay. Mr. Jetter, do you have anything further?
Nothing further from the division. Thank
Okay.
you.
Ms. Clark, anything further in this docket?
No, thank you.
Okay. All right. I believe we're ready to move on to the next docket, which is the 16 docket. This docket is entitled Application of Dominion Energy Utah to Amortize the Energy Efficiency Deferred Account Balance.
Thank you. The company calls again Mr. Summers. Mr. Summers, you've been sworn and you've identified yourself previously in this hearing. With regard to the application that was filed in this docket, along with the accompanying exhibits 1.1 through 1.6, did you participate in the preparation of those documents?
I did.
And would you adopt their contents as your testimony today?
I would.
The company would move for the admission of the application and accompanying exhibits 1.1 through 1.6.
Any objection?
No objection. Thank you.
They're admitted.
Thank you. Mr. Summers, can you summarize the relief the company is seeking in this docket?
Yes, in the application of Dominion Energy Utah to amortize the demand-side management energy efficiency deferred account balance, the company proposes to increase the amortization rate from 20 cents to 25 cents in an effort to collect the projected expenses during the test period, while at the same time minimizing interest expense for both customers and the company. If approved, this rate change would result in an annual increase of $4.01 on the bill of a typical customer, or about 0.63%. The company believes that this rate is just, reasonable, and in the public interest. Therefore, the company requests that the rates be approved on an interim basis, with rates going into effect on November 1st of 2018. And that concludes my summary.
Excuse me, Mr. Summers is available for questions and cross-examination.
Any questions from the division?
No questions. Thank you.
Mr. Summers, is it your testimony that the rates that are being proposed in this docket, the 16 docket, are just and reasonable and in the public interest?
Yes, they are.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any further questions.
Thank you. The company has nothing further in this docket.
Mr. Jetter.
The division would like to call in and swear in Brenda Salter, excuse me.
Ms. Salter, do you swear to tell the truth?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Salter, would you please state your name and occupation for the record?
My name is Brenda Salter. I am a technical consultant with the Division of Public Utilities.
Thank you. And in the course of your employment with the division, have you had the opportunity to review the company's filings in the 18057-16 docket?
Yes, I have.
And did you participate in the creation of the action request response dated October 23rd, 2018 that was filed in this docket?
Yes, I did.
With respect to the three corrections that were referenced by Mr. Wheelwright in the 18057-13 docket, do you agree with those?
Yes.
And with those corrections, would you adopt the recommendations related to this docket?
Yes, I would. Yes.
Do you have a brief summary of the division's position in this docket?
I do.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. Docket 1805716 is the request to amortize the energy efficiency deferred account balance. Based on the current balance, projected volumes, and energy efficiency budget, the company believes it can collect the required revenue while minimizing interest expense with an increase to the amortization rate. The company is requesting that the amortization rate increase from the current rate of approximately 20 cents per decatherm to approximately 25 cents per decatherm. The company believes the proposed adjustment to the amortization rate will be sufficient to collect the estimated 2019 DSM energy efficiency budget plus the July 2018 remaining balance. If approved by the Commission, the typical GS rate class customer will see an increase in their annual bill of $4.01 or 0.63%. The DSM energy efficiency account appears to be functioning as approved by the Commission. The Division recommends that the Commission approve the proposed rate on an interim basis until a completed audit can be performed by the Division. Thank you.
Thank you. And do you believe that approval of the application as you've described would be just and reasonable in result and in the public interest?
Yes, I do.
I have no further questions, and Ms. Salter is available for cross or questions from the Commission.
Thank you. Any questions from the company?
No, thank you.
Ms. Salter, just to follow up on your request to have the effective date November 1st, 2018, is that on an interim basis?
It is, yes.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. I have nothing further. Is there anything further from the Division?
Nothing further from the Division.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, I think we're ready to move on to our last docket, docket 17. And this docket is entitled Application of Dominion Energy Utah for an Adjustment to the Low Income Assistance Energy Assistance Rate.
Thank you. The company once again calls Mr. Summers. Mr. Summers, with regard to the application in this matter and the accompanying exhibits 1.1 through 1.5, did you participate in the preparation of those documents?
I did.
And do you adopt their contents as your testimony today?
Yes.
The company would move for the admission of the application and accompanying exhibits 1.1 through 1.5.
Any objection?
No objection.
They are admitted.
Thank you. Mr. Summers, can you please summarize the relief the company seeks in this docket?
Yes, in this docket, the application of Dominion Energy Utah for a tariff change and adjustment to the low-income assistance energy assistance rate, Dominion Energy Utah is proposing to make changes to the energy assistance rate, and these changes will result in an annual decrease of 6 cents for a typical customer, which is about 1/100%. The company is also proposing to increase the annual energy assistance credit to $77 per qualifying customer per year. It is anticipated that there will be about $1.7 million available to help qualifying customers pay their gas bills during the winter heating season, and it is anticipated that about 22,400 customers will participate in this program during the 2018-2019 test period. It is my testimony that the proposed rates are just, reasonable, and in the public interest. Therefore, the company requests that the rates be approved with rates going into effect on November 1st of 2018, and that concludes my summary.
Mr. Summers is available for cross-examination and commission questions.
Any questions from the Division?
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Summers. I have no further questions.
Thank you.
Anything further from the company?
Company has nothing further on this docket.
Okay. Mr. Jetter.
Thank you. The Division will call again Doug Wheelwright in this docket. Mr. Wheelwright, with respect to this docket, 1805717, the action request response dated October 23rd, 2018, with the corrections that you made earlier in this hearing, would you adopt that as your testimony with respect to this docket?
Yes, I would.
Have you created a brief summary that you'd like to read into the record this morning on this docket?
Yes.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. Docket number 18-057-17 is a request to adjust the low-income assistance component of the D&G rates and increase the annual assistance amount available to qualifying customers. The Division has reviewed and supports the application as submitted by the company and agrees that the annual credit should be increased from $72.50 to $77. If this docket is approved individually, a typical GS customer will see a decrease of 6 cents in their annual bill. This program does not require an audit of the individual entries, and the division believes that the requested changes are just, reasonable, and in the public interest. The division recommends that the proposed rate be approved with an effective date of November 1st, 2018.
Thank you. I'd like to move at this time for the entry of the division's action request response dated October 23rd, 2018 into the record of the hearing today for all 5 of the dockets that we've addressed. And I'd also like to just note on the record that I have also referred to this as the division's memo, and both of those references are to the same document.
Mr. Jetter, before I go to the division, to the company on your motion, I'm assuming that you're requesting to have it admitted with the corrections that have been presented and accepted in this docket.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Any objection?
No objection.
Thank you. It's admitted.
Thank you. And I'd like to follow up by another question to Mr. Wheelwright. Have you prepared a brief summary of the effects and the combination of all 5 of these dockets?
Yes, I have.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. In summary, the division supports and recommends approval of the rate changes requested in all 5 of the dockets discussed today. The division would recommend interim approval for the transportation imbalance charge, the 191 pass-through, and the energy efficiency dockets in order to allow the division to complete an audit of the individual entries in the respective accounts. The conservation enabling tariff and the low income docket do not need interim approval. While each docket has been presented independently, the division has completed a summary of the combined impact of all of the proposed changes. With decreases in the pass-through, CET, and low income, and a slight increase in the DSM rate, if all 5 dockets are approved, a typical GS customer will see a net decrease of approximately $36.36 per year, or a 5.71% decrease from the rates currently in effect. The division believes that the requested changes are just, reasonable, and in the public interest, and recommends approval with an effective date of November 1st, 2018.
Thank you. I have no further questions for Mr. Wheelwright. He's available for cross-and questions from the commission.
Thank you. Any questions from the company?
I have one question, Mr. Wheelwright. I wanted to clarify, I was furiously taking notes and may have missed it. I wanted to clarify the division's position on whether rates should be interim and final. Is it the division's position that the rates in the transportation imbalance charge docket number 1805713, should be final or interim?
Interim on the 13 docket.
Okay, that answers my question. Thank you.
The commission has no questions, Mr. Wheelwright. Thank you very much for your testimony. Mr. Jetter, do you have anything further?
No, nothing further from the division today.
Okay. Ms. Clark, anything further?
Yes, if I could. The company would like to move for the approval, for an order approving the dockets as discussed today. More specifically, in 18057-13, we request approval of the rates effective November 1st. In 18057-14, we also request approval of those rates effective November 1st, both of those on an interim basis. With respect to docket 18057-15, we request approval of those rates as final effective November 1st, 2018. With regard to 18057-16, we request approval of those rates on an interim basis effective November 1st, 2018. And with respect to docket 18057-17, we request approval of those rates on a final basis effective November 1st, 2018. And finally, the company would further move that the commission's order as to these dockets permit the company or order the company to submit a compliance filing as discussed by Mr. Summers that would include the comprehensive tariff sheets of all of these dockets and docket number 18057 T04. And that concludes the very lengthy motion. Thank you for your patience.
Mr. Jetter, do you have anything to add to that? Are you, is that acceptable to you?
That would be acceptable to the division. We have no objection to that motion. So.
Okay. All right. Ms. Clark, I indicated at the outset that it is the commission's intention to issue an order and not a bench order. So we will strive to do that as quickly as possible and take into the consideration the testimony that's been provided today. We very much appreciate that and hope you have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you. This hearing is adjourned.
Thank you.